When it comes to controlling your weight, what's the best approach for you? KXL's Tim Lance got the skinny, if you will, on fad diets this week from healthy living expert Jonathan Bailor, CEO of SANESolution.
Have you ever gone down the grocery store aisle and noticed all the foods that are labeled paleo or maybe keto or gluten-free and so on? Diets seem to come and go, but should you be paying more attention to them? That's the question. Let's dive into the health benefits, or maybe the lack of same, with fad diets. Joining us now on Portland's Afternoon News is healthy living expert Jonathan Bailor. Jonathan, welcome back to Portland's Afternoon News.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's start with your take on dieting in general. Do you like the idea or not of us changing what we eat and the way we eat for just short periods of time?
The challenge with changing what we eat for short periods of time is that we will then only get results for short periods of time. I know that might sound a little bit obvious, but if you are trying to speed up your car, for example, you push down on the accelerator, your car will go faster. But if you take your foot off the accelerator, your car will slow down. That doesn't mean your car's broken, and it really doesn't mean you're doing anything wrong. It just means if you like the results you're getting from something, you by definition have to keep doing it to get those results. So if a diet isn't something we enjoy and we won't keep up the results.
Are there any of these so-called fad diets that you like from a health standpoint, at least, considering what they could do for you short term?
There is really nothing short term that is healthy. What I mean by that very specifically is we've seen a tremendous amount of research that shows, for example, that short term weight loss that is then followed by weight regain is worse for you than just staying overweight. So any kind of short term initiative is problematic by definition when it comes to your health.
All right. Again, we're talking on Portland's Afternoon News with Jonathan Bailor. He's a healthy living expert, and he's sharing his thoughts today about fad dieting. So I'll tell you that I lost about 45 pounds several years ago with what was called at that time, maybe still is, the DASH diet. Are you familiar with that?
Vaguely, but not as much as some of the like paleo and keto type diets that are popular today.
I think it's similar to those in some ways. Basically, a lot of proteins, lean meats, fish, that kind of thing. Obviously, lots of veggies, nuts, fruits, but cutting back on the carbs, bread, any other kinds of carbs. And I have to tell you that worked really well for me. And it wasn't what I would consider to be a fad diet, because it was a way of eating that I was supposed to continue for the rest of my life, but also along with moderate exercise. Is that something you could get on board with?
Basically, any way of eating that is not the standard American diet is better than the standard American diet. So what you mentioned, and I think the reason you had success, are these common denominators, which do exist. And frankly, they are the reason that any diet works. What I mean by that, for example, if you look at paleo, for example, or if you look at keto, for example, or even if you look at veganism and vegetarianism, they do have common denominators. All of them say that processed foods are a bad idea. And that's true. The more that you can eliminate processed foods, the better you'll live. They all say that sugar is a bad idea. The more you can avoid sugar, the better. They all say that vegetables are good for you. The more vegetables you can eat, the better. So by focusing on these common denominators, many of which you mentioned, those are, one, not things that we can only sustain in the short term because they make sense and they're not problematic. And two, they do work. So I would recommend not looking for any one-size-fits-all fad diet, but rather finding these common denominators. And that's really what we focus at SANESolution, and also in the film we did with top doctors at Harvard Medical School called Better, which are, what are these pillars, these common denominators that have been proven over time and in myriad studies to help every human on the planet live better.
And sometimes it seems like it can be so confusing, Jonathan. I've seen things online. If you're looking at YouTube or various other social media outlets, you're inevitably going to see an ad for various doctors telling you, don't eat this, do eat that. It seems as though you really almost can't trust anybody out there, because a lot of them are out to make a buck, to sell you something.
That's very true. It's also important to keep in mind that when it comes to nutrition, you can judge how much of an expert someone is by essentially their level of humility, because we are learning so much every day when it comes to the uniqueness of our gut microbiome and of our neurobiology that foods that may in fact be delightful for one person may actually cause disease in another person. I want to give two quick disclaimers. So one example of that are peanuts, right? Peanuts can kill certain people and peanuts are fine for others. So we know that. What I'm saying is not controversial in that sense. But we also do know, for example, that sugar isn't good for anybody. So if we can just start with, don't eat things that grandma wouldn't recognize. If you just do that, you're going to be so much healthier. And if anyone disagrees with you on that, they probably work for General Mills.
Although I will tell you, my grandma put a lot of sugar in everything, but that's another story, and we'll get to that perhaps another time. Hey, we are out of time, unfortunately. Jonathan Bailor, thank you so much for talking to us today on Portland's Afternoon News.
Thank you.